Of all the videos I could do, this one's probably the most important. If you're anything like me, if you are sensitive, if you are creative, if you feel a lot, if you're neurodivergent, if you walk around walking, talking, feeling, living to the depths of your soul. I don't know what to call it, an ailment. I have a recurring problem. And that problem is that I forget. There's a couple reasons. I think it's because my nervous system is a little what I call sticky. That sun just moved really into a weird spot. My nervous system is what I call sticky, like a long-haired dog running through a high grass field. I just pick up the sticker burrs. That could be part of my neurodiversity, or it could be because of the childhood environment I grew up both at home and in religious school. I do believe that in addition to neurodivergence, there are some ways that my nervous system was trained to pick up on everything else outside of me and ignore a lot of the things inside of me. And today, I want to talk to you about remember who you be. And the problem I have, the affliction I have, the recurring theme of the last 53 years is that I forget. Because my nervous system takes in so much stimulation and pattern recognition, there's a lot of really good things I'm really good at because of that. I'm really good at intuition and strategy, and especially outside of me, but a lot of times I forget the truth of what's inside of me. And I want to invite you to remember today too. I saw the phrase this morning, elemental, and immediately my brain translated it to Allison, remember your elemental self, your core self. Remember who you are. Remember who you, and I usually write it capital B-E, remember who you be. And midlife has brought so many daggum changes. I'm pretty sure there's a part of me that has been thinking I needed to do something different. My psychiatrist and last year my therapist are like, you're so hard on yourself. And I've been really pondering that because I'm not somebody who speaks meanly to myself. I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and some of them have really intense inner critics. In general, I don't speak to myself that way. And what I am is driven. And sometimes I am driven from creativity and hyper-focus. And sometimes I'm driven by financial needs. Sometimes I'm driven by safety. I'm a human being. I'm driven. Anyways, this morning, just acknowledging that there could be a lot of things going on in your personal world that cause you to forget. When we're stressed, we're going to forget who we really are. When we're physically feeling not ourselves, we're going to forget who we are. And midlife brings those transitions: physical, mental, emotional, relational, vocational, purpose, meaning. I'm sure I forgot something. So many things change. And so much of what we've pressed down in our 30s and early 40s begins to quake inside of us. And I know in my personal life, I remember a few years ago, one of my best friends had 13 family members die in 4 or 6 years. I can't remember which of those it is. But it was just like one after the other, including 2 children. Talk about earthquake, these examples of things outside of us. And then we have the societal earthquakes that seem to be going on. And I have been an early adopter of technology. I had an aunt who passed away a couple years ago in her 80s, but in the 70s, she made sure we had computers. My dad was into computers early. She was an information technology person. Naturally, in a lot of the ways that technology has been helpful for me, and it has been helpful for me in so many ways. And the last 10 years, and especially the last 5 years, technology has changed so much and so quickly. The rapid changes outside of us are more than our nervous systems have been able to adapt to. And so all of these things can contribute to this sense of forgetting who we are, forgetting I actually like to take in a lot of information. Doing this out in a windy park probably isn't the best idea. And I wanted to get away from all the information and overstimulation in my office. I'm doing this YouTube thing. And I'm also reblooming my professional coaching practice. I've told myself the story that I've set aside my leadership self. I set aside my professional self. I've told myself that I'm really good at creating trust building content, except for that's not a phrase I would ever use. I do what I call share my heart and show my work. And recently I forgot. And I kept telling myself, because, like, here's why. Because I know you watching this, you're watching YouTube. And I guarantee no matter what your special interests are that are on your feed, there's also probably how to get better at YouTube, how to monetize YouTube on your TikTok feed, on all your feeds. The only feed I don't see it on is Facebook. But like how to get more views, how to become monetized, how to become popular, how to become popular, how to become popular. And while I would like my services to have a wait list and be on high demand, I don't really want popular. I don't want brand deals. Those don't actually serve the work that I'm here doing in the world. But that is what the noise of society is constantly we're exposed to, whether you want to be or not. If you are online in any capacity, and because you're watching this video, I know you are, that stuff is incessant. And I'm reminded of a little story about a couple of fish that are swimming around in the water, and their grandpa comes up and they're like, "What's up, grandpa?" And he's like, "How's the water, boys?" And they're like, "What water?" They don't know they're swimming in water. And that's just the way our nervous systems work. So I have found it helpful. Unfortunately for these things, I have certain nourishing practices to help me remember who I am. Sometimes that happens because I look up and see this little chart on my wall. It says remember. I have 3 or 4 of these around. There's a rainbow one that say remember. It's such a perfect example of how easily I can get distracted. There's a small group of people with children walking close by, talking, and it totally distracts me. It's just the perfect metaphor. And I lose all of the self-connection to flow inside of me. What do you do to remember who you are? Do you have a problem forgetting? Are there things that make you forget? Do you even have an awareness of this remembering and forgetting? I do. I was writing my book. It published a couple years ago, but for about 3 years I was writing, and I still go to writing practice daily with my writing group and my writing coach. And I remember towards the end of my book, I was like, what is the theme of my book? I'm at the end of writing this book that I've been writing for years. And I'm like, what is the theme? And one of my former clients, good friends, my coach, they look at me and they're like, Allison, self-trust. And at the time I went and looked at my website that had been around for over a decade of me writing and publishing and doing work and all those little tags before we had hashtags, there were tags for our website. And not a single one of them was self-trust. And yet, even back when I was a high performance sales coach, yes, I was teaching clients sales skills, but it was about self-trust. And to really learn how to trust ourselves, which is what my little autistic brain does right now. It's like it wants to explain 900 things you need to know to trust yourself. And in the past, I've searched YouTube to see what other people are saying about self-trust, and they're like, discipline. Okay. Write yourself a note. Oh my God, to trust yourself, you have to really know yourself. And to know yourself, you have to meet yourself. And to meet yourself, you have to be willing to see all of it, be with all of it. And most of society, the water that we swim in, doesn't want you to see or know yourself. There's this concept in psychology. They're actually starting to do a lot more research around it in neuropsychology and neurobiology. It's called interoception. Interoception is the way the brain, I'm going to say this in layperson's terms, not that I would know how to say it in the total scientific terms, but interoception is the sense that we all develop, the internal sense we develop for our needs and knowing. A physical example would be to begin to recognize when you need to use the restroom or when you're hungry or thirsty, right? So as a little kid, we are in diapers and then we learn to get potty trained. And part of that is learning to trust the way your neurology and your brain tells you, hey, I gotta pee. Interoception is also your psychology and trusting your gut and your intuition. And my particular childhood trauma situation caused me to escape into my brain and disassociate from my body. So I became this head-led person and did not realize how much the high demand religion of my church and school when I was little, not at home, strangely, that the pressure from that was don't feel your feelings. But church literally said, don't remember who you are. That church taught me don't trust who you are. School taught me don't trust who you are. There was no voices in any of that saying you can trust who you are. Maybe you heard that when you were little. And mom and dad, I love you. And I don't know anybody my age whose parents were comfortable with their kids having uncomfortable emotions. I won't call them negative emotions, but they're like, if I could endure going back to graduate school and endure being in a system to get a PhD, I would be doing some kind of study from my prove it to you all. And here's my middle finger self. No, there's no such thing as negative emotion. We experience them as uncomfortable, as miserable, as painful, but they're not negative. And when you are a little child having honestly an authentic experience of discomfort, an adult says, don't feel that way, even well meaning, oh, cry. Oh my gosh, that another way of saying that is, oh, don't have your natural reaction. I'm uncomfortable with your natural reaction. What's a child supposed to do? How are they supposed to remember who they are when that is not facilitated? And so here I am in this midlife journey, honestly thankful to personal development, which I've been fascinated in since I was 15 years old, that led me to this, self-trust thing that most of the answers, as much as I love information and I love learning new things, learning how to interpret the wisdom inside of me, learning how to use that information and integrate it with my body, remembering my elemental self, remembering my core self. And I talk about self a lot in the terms of internal family systems, and internal family systems is a model of the mind that is used not only in therapy, but a whole different, can be put in any context, but that we have different parts of us, and then we have a core self. And that core self is not like, it's unique to me. And I think I've been reaching back for versions of me that worked. That's probably a common midlife thing. I've been, unlike any other time in my life, I don't have a lot of vision for the future, mostly because there's not a whole lot of stuff I want. I remember being in my early 40s and I didn't get that people wanted safety. And I noticed that those core needs, and I think because as a child, my core needs, I wasn't taught, I didn't know. And when I had a spontaneous eruption of having a core need, it was either shut down through religion or being a child of alcoholic parents. And as an adult, I'm learning what my core needs are, right? I'm learning what safety means. I'm learning these things that I never valued: responsibility, financial planning, that kind of stuff. It's not about accumulating more so that I feel good. Listen, I was raised to chase the dopamine hit, and I still love me a dopamine hit. But I was raised to either intellectualize or get smart about a problem, be wise, surrender to God completely, disassociate in my specific experience, disassociate, positivity bypass, or at home, just shut it down. Like there was a little bit of aggression shutting me down. And so here I am, this fully autonomous adult, not only remembering who I am, but meeting all parts of me, and not meeting them from a coach or a teacher aspect, but from curiosity and connection and self-connection. And just the world today, not the world. It wasn't the world. It was actually something in my dreams, and then a little serendipity. And yes, I still believe in magic and serendipity and some kind of universal thread, but it reminded me to check in with my elemental self. And the first two things I wrote down was, I am free and I am driven. And then this morning on my Facebook memories, I like to look at my memories every single day. And there was something from 2020, and it was a picture of me and the dog that I have now. I lost 2 in the last couple of years. And it was a picture of me just really content in my hammock. And it was a paragraph about how genuinely and deeply coaching has impacted my life, and how accidentally stumbling across this profession, this vocation, was my dharma. It was much more eloquent, but it reminded me, along with in 2022 and 23, when everything was going to shit, what made me like want to stay on this earth. It sounds really dramatic, but there was the first time ever I thought of, let's just escape this shit. This is not fun. And my coaching sessions with my clients, I would be on and get off of those coaching sessions remembering who I was. I felt good about myself. I felt good about the connections. I felt good about the work that I was doing. During those last 2 years, it wasn't about the money I'm making and Listen for a long time. It was also about that. There was something I was proving to myself. But it was when everything else was stripped away, even my marriage got a little rocky in there. And this work that I get to do in relationship with my clients And so that's the third thing I wrote on here. Coaching is my dharma and life's work. And one of the things that happened in the last few years is that I had some growing and maturing around my professional self. I didn't know I was autistic and ADHD at the time, but when I left corporate, there were so many things I loved about that. I really miss working in an office sometimes, not 8 to 5, but I really miss just having a community of people. I do miss that. I don't miss all the corporate hierarchy BS. I do not miss all that other stuff. And as somebody who's neurodivergent, those demands on my system, I can look back now and see, oh, that's why. And honestly, most of the people, and I've reached out to a couple of them, most of the other people in both graduate school, I reached out to her. She's in a nursing home and I went and took her to lunch. Sue Grobe was my boss in graduate school, and she and her partner, who's since passed away, they're like in their late 70s, early 80s now. And they were so gracious with my emotional meltdowns. They never shamed me. And then the principal, when I worked at a Catholic school, I'm still friends with him too, John Cisneros. John Cisneros always saw my brilliance and was never fazed when I would have what I now know is emotional or mental dysregulation. Never fazed. But I had other bosses that were horrible, that I would be I don't know, it was hard. It was hard. Leading myself and running a business, I don't even know what to call it. I call it self-employed. I work for myself. I work for my clients. I'm not trying to scale. Do not send me a cold pitch asking me to scale. Another one of the questions I asked myself this morning, I was like, Allison, what have you always loved? What, through all the changes you've had in life, and I've had some pretty monumental growth changes and like hardcore life turned real far left or right. And what has never changed? My love for animals, specifically dogs. Pens, paper, art, writing, deeper connection with people, either being outside like I am today. I don't need monumental effort. I'm not climbing a 14er. I did that. I didn't do that. I was friends with people who did that, and I would climb the bottom halves when I was in my 20s, but just in the outdoors or cozy up in my bed. None of that has changed my whole life. And swimming, those are pretty foundational things to me. And it hasn't changed. I have been overthinking and all up in my damn head about my business. And listen, I had one of my former clients on TikTok say to me, she was like, Allison, you're overthinking. That's what my brain does. So shame about my overthinking brain is not going to help. And when I experience, listen, I know my client didn't mean it that way, but when I experience the energies of you're doing it wrong, right? I have parts that start to shut down and I get uptight. And I really do probably just need to chill the F out a little bit more. And I know exactly why I've been overthinking. I've been overthinking because in that maturing, we finally circle back, in that maturing, there were a lot of things about leadership and adulting and being a business that I didn't have any mentors or teachers. I just wung it. And I didn't grow up boundaried. I grew up wild and free and feral. And then the opposite to me was like completely restrained. And I didn't know how to find fluidity. I didn't know how to find nuance. I didn't know how to find, and I talk about this a lot with my clients, like it's not either or, it's both. And it's also always situational. And I was an overgiver. I'm recovering people pleaser, recovering overgiver, which means that I attracted a lot of overtakers, not all, but a lot of overtakers. Being neurodivergent, in a lot of ways, I was easily manipulatable. being both sensitive to rejection, sensitive dysphoria. The opposite side of rejection, sensitive dysphoria is a recognition, responsive euphoria. And being a leader and being loved as a leader was one of the ways that I was able to mask autism and ADHD until my physicality cracked at 50. So the core self, the elemental self of who I am, I capital am, who I be, including things that excite me and energize me and things that stress me. And these are not necessarily things that we grow beyond. I think that's a toxic individualism. I'm learning that being ADD and autistic, that I just need some accessibility here and there. I need some support. It's not something for me to grow through. Learning boundaries, sure, grow through. I'm not going to ever stop being physically or emotionally sensitive. That's just who I've been since I was a little kid. I'm not going to ever stop needing tons of sleep. As a child with 4 brothers and sisters, I remember going on vacation and really exciting things happening, and I just needed to sleep. I just require a lot of sleep. My dad requires a lot of sleep. That's just in my DNA. And I keep making up that in so many ways because I had to shut down part of my business, or there's things I just no longer have the tolerance for, that everything had to be so different. It can be anything I want it to be, but the core elements of who I am and who I be, when I remember those, strengthen me, they energize me. Regarding YouTube, I think I did this with TikTok too. I could have been one of those early adopters on TikTok. I was up in there in 2017 just watching. And even after creating video content and live content and written content and visual content for years, somehow I got stuck because I made up a story in my mind of how it should be instead of just letting myself be myself. And I made up this story that, oh, YouTube requires fancy editing. I'm not trying to be Mr. Beast. I'm Allison Crow. Me. I am not trying to be popular. And even if I monetize, and I think today what I'm going to leave here, I am actually, listen, I'm not going to turn it off, okay? But I'm going to take that off of, I'm going to still track, but I'm going to take it off my directional goals. My goal is to use this platform to be creative, to share my heart and show my work like I have done professionally for years. I keep thinking I need to develop this professional version of myself because I don't come on here and say, this is how you do emotional regulation. These are the emotions you need to learn. I'm holding myself. I can see specific leaders in my life that I'm holding myself to their version of leadership, which frankly was artificial. Or somewhere because authenticity got popular. Listen, my authenticity has burned my ass quite a few times. Okay. And I realize that's a risk I'm willing to take. I'm a little messy around the edges. I am not concise. I am never going to be able to stand at a lectern. As you stated, I have stood at lecterns and on stages. But even the way that I speak in front of 200 or 2,000 people is not the way most people do a TEDx. People used to tell me, Allison, you should do a TEDx. Dude, I can't stand on that red dot. And so when I connect to me, I can connect to you. And I woke up this morning from a dream. It's a whole nother thing. I have the weirdest, coolest dreams that help me process old stuff. But I realized that living where I live now, and working from home. I've been working from home for a long time, but our neighborhood is less populated. I've made up some stories about the political safety of, listen, I'm a lefty, okay? And I live in a town that hangs up all the nasty, mean flags, and it is a little intimidating. Whew. And I don't have a lot of local community all over the world. I have my writing community. They're all over the world. And in the past, I've had my coaching clients and people, and I have a couple of good friends around here, but I don't have that. I don't have community. My husband and I talk about this a lot. In some ways, we're so connected online, and he's connected with a lot of his actually junior high friends from Oscoda, Michigan. But I miss being in community. So as much as on one hand, I hate people, on the other hand, I miss being in community. I know that my husband and I would thrive if we were able to find ourselves in community. And we were talking the other day how, like, when you don't have, we're empty nesters, right? When your little kids aren't playing sport, like, you don't have all the school friends. And then if you don't go to church, and I ain't going to church, find community. Not touching it with a 10-foot pole. And then even business-wise, ever since I moved outside of Austin, I'm not driving 45 minutes into town every single day and an hour and a half back home in traffic. I got to be real choiceful with my energy. That dream helped me realize that connection with people is important for me. And even when I was little, and even though this, like, number one diagnostic criteria, and what even my doctor at first was like, you're too social to be autistic. You're too social to be autistic. Autistic people need connection too. And we may be, I can't speak for anybody else, but we can be social. We just need to be social on our own terms. We need to be social with permission to leave early, or we need to be both connected and independent at the same time. And if we could not have to meet social norms, I remember going to this event, and we'd go 3 or 4 times a year. It was a big event one of my coaches would have, and I would graphic record it for her. And he would always do this speed coaching round. And the speed coaching round with 200 people in a room, it was like there's 100 people lined up here and 100 people lined up here, and they do 3-minute coaching, and the room gets really loud. And I would always go upstairs and take a bath in the middle of the day. And before I created that little system for myself, I would get overwhelmed. That was such a good example of, I love going to those events, and I wasn't able to stay in the room 24/7. I needed to be independent. In the middle of the day, go discharge all the energy, be alone, wash it off, and then come back down for the rest of the evening. And I never stayed up late. I go to bed early. Okay, so this is a lot of rambling, and I'm okay with that. Can you remember your elemental self? And when we connect to and remember the core of who we are, and I know a lot of things change inside of us and outside of us, but we have an elemental self that has wisdom, that has a portal to creativity and joy. I have so much compassion. If life has beaten the shit out of you and you've forgotten, there is no judgment. And if today you're not ready to remember, that's okay too. Just know it's there. That's the yellow heart for me. And I recently just changed my YouTube banner back, and I'm changing some of my marketing on my website, and all that's inconsistent right now. I don't really care, but I'm changing. It's just so simple. It's the yellow heart. I've been drawing a yellow heart with a black outline since I was a kid in school. And I think I liked yellow hearts because my dad liked yellow. But yellow reminds me to remember who I am. Everybody does a red heart, like hearts are red. But the yellow heart was me. I'm the yellow heart. Remember. What do you need to remember about yourself? Put it in the comments below. Let me know. Let me know what videos I can make for you. I personally connect better when I am connected to and engaged with your questions or your energy. That's just me.